All right, data nerds. Um, I'm slowly making some progress on the next revision of my Arduino and race capture setup in the car. So this particular gauge display, again, is through the race capture app on the Android head unit. Now the race capture is this guy down here. Excuse the mess because I've got some work going on. The Arduino with a single CAN bus shield, and in between is a shield board that I have soldered a bunch of stuff onto. There's only one sensor soldered on there, which is a barometric pressure sensor. But long story short, barometric pressure sensor is sending absolute pressure in kilopascals here. So we're seeing 94 kPa currently, which matches up with the weather channel, matches up with my phone barometric pressure sensor, and matches up with the baro sensor in the car ECM. This P20, I actually should have named it P21, but anyways, this is the pressure being measured both after the turbocharger and after the e-boosters, but before it goes from the back of the car up to the front. So essentially after everything gets compressed, but before it goes through any major pressure drop in the system. P22 is intake manifold pressure. So this is measuring absolute. So all three of these sensors are pretty well calibrated to each other. Of course, some of the sensors are behaving slightly differently. You can see some dancing around a bit here, but within 1 kPa, very acceptable. And then ultimately for my brain, I've got IMAP, which of course I'm not using that term correctly because that's typically absolute pressure. But this guy is in PSI, and this is always corrected for barometric pressure. So regardless of what elevation I'm at, whether P1 is 80 or 110, pretty extremes there. This guy will always read 0 when there's at atmospheric pressure. So positive numbers, it'll read, essentially it'll be displaying boost pressure, and negative numbers, it'll be displaying a vacuum relative to atmosphere. Then here down is no changes down here, but just in terms of temperature progression, I've got temperature, atmospheric temp in degrees C. I've got temperature at this same sensor here, so at all the charge outlets, that's the current temperature of the sensor and air. Intercooler temp is the temp of the coolant going through the water-to-air intercooler in Celsius. And then IAT, it's not quite being measured at the exact same place, but for all intents and purposes, this is representative of the air going into the intake manifold. So this is coming from the MAF sensor on the factory ECU. So engine's been running. I drove the car today, so that's why some of these temps are up, and it's just been sitting in the garage. But I crank it up. So you saw no change here, which is good. Almost no change here, which, yep, that's essentially no change. But this guy, of course, started to pull vacuum, so the kPa dropped, and intake manifold pressure went negative in terms of PSI. Temperature changes, maybe IAT will start to drop because there's air flowing through the charge plumbing. But minimal air. So anyways, happy with all that. Super nerding out.